At my grandson's engagement party, I faced mockery from his fiancée's family, but my grandson took a stand that changed everything. Today is the long-awaited day of Steve's engagement party. Since Steve doesn't have parents, I, his grandmother, will be attending in their place. Thinking about the people who are going to become family, I can't help but feel a bit nervous. However, despite my worries, the engagement party went smoothly. Steve's fiancée, Nancy's parents, were both smiling and conversing with Steve. Amidst all this, Nancy suddenly spoke to me. "So it's true that Steve was raised by his grandma?" "Oh yes, didn't Steve tell you?" "He did." I just thought, no way. Nancy stared at me intently, as if assessing me again. Her mother, looking very much like Nancy, gave me the same scrutinizing look. Then she glanced at my classic dress and giggled. Well, it's about time for dinner. The table was filling up with luxurious dishes that I don't usually eat. However, in front of me was just a small plate of pickles with no fork. What is the meaning of this? I felt as if I had been hit over the head. When I asked, my voice trembling, Nancy's mother giggled and said, "It's quite the meal for a poor pensioner, isn't it? Why did I have to endure such words? Do they understand how rude they are being? Are these the people I'm supposed to become family with?" My thoughts were swirling with anger, sadness, and frustration, and I couldn't say a word. Then Steve, who was sitting next to me, stood up silently and said, in a terrifyingly low voice, "That's enough. Let's go home, Grandma. I'll take you back to your high-rise condo." "What? A high-rise condo?" Ignoring Nancy's high-pitched voice, Steve continued, "Grandma doesn't deserve to be treated so rudely because my name is Katherine Johnson. After living a busy life, I suddenly found myself 64 years old. Now I enjoy my remaining years while holding a design class for children once a week. My daughter, Diana, has become independent, and I now have a lovely grandson named Steve. I've become a full-fledged grandma." With a shopping bag in one hand, I headed to my favorite fruit store with a light step. When I showed up at the store, the owner immediately noticed me and greeted me cheerfully. "Hello, Catherine. You're in a good mood today." "Oh, you can tell?" The sharp-eyed owner quickly noticed my good mood. I nodded, feeling pleased that he noticed. Actually, Diana and her family, including my grandson Steve, are coming to visit, and today is also Diana's wedding anniversary. After losing my husband early, I always look forward to Diana occasionally sending me photos of Steve and visiting with him. Diana values not only messaging on her phone, but also writing letters by hand, sending them during the seasons and travels. A few weeks ago, she sent me a card from a family trip to a spa, mentioning they would visit for their anniversary. It's wonderful they're coming to visit on such a special day. That's great. By the way, the new cake shop in the neighborhood has the perfect cakes for celebrations, the owner said, moved as if it were his own family, showing me the town magazine with a cake shop advertisement. While the cake shop looked stylish and new, I shook my head in response. No, I thought I'd bake something myself. I came to buy the ingredients today. Since Diana's family was coming to visit for their special anniversary, I wanted to do something special to welcome them. I wanted them to have a wonderful anniversary. When I conveyed my feelings, the owner was so moved that he gave me a small discount on the fruit, calling it an anniversary discount. Then I went home, baked a cake, and eagerly waited for the three of them to arrive. As the sun set and the sky grew dark, I began to feel anxious. They're late. When Diana and her husband visit, they usually arrive by the evening. Diana is always diligent about letting me know if they're going to be late. It's strange not to hear from her this late at night. Could something have happened? As the night deepened, my anxiety grew. I couldn't bring myself to eat dinner alone. Suddenly, my smartphone rang loudly. I picked it up and saw it was Diana's number. I breathed a sigh of relief and answered the call. However, the voice on the other end was not Diana's, but a calm, male voice. "Hello, this is the police. Are you the mother of Diana Johnson?" "Yes, I'm her mother, Catherine." "Is something wrong, officer? Why is the police calling from Diana's number?" I felt a chill and tried to keep my voice from trembling as I urged him to continue. "Please stay calm and listen." There was a multi-car accident on the highway, and Diana, her husband, and Steve were on their way to visit me when they got into a serious multi-car accident on the highway. They were in critical condition, and I rushed to the hospital they were taken to, but by the time I arrived, it was too late. Diana and her husband had already passed away. Luckily, Steve had only minor injuries and was sitting alone in a hospital room looking dejected. "I'm so sorry you have to feel so lonely." Seeing him sitting there so helplessly, I couldn't help but hold his small body tightly. Steve tried to smile bravely and shook his head. "It's not your fault, Grandma. As long as I have you, I'll be okay." But he couldn't hold back his tears any longer and started crying loudly. Holding him close, I resolved to raise this child as best as I could. I decided to take Steve in. I didn't think I could replace his parents, but I vowed to do my best to ensure he could choose any path in the future. So I cut back on unnecessary expenses. I stopped buying new books and trendy clothes. Luxury furnishings and branded items were out of the question. However, for Steve's growth, I spared no expense on tuition and living expenses. Even so, sometimes doubts would creep into my mind. I chose to raise Steve, but was I really the right person for it? If only Diana's family hadn't planned to visit me on their anniversary. If only I had told them to leave me alone and let them enjoy themselves together when I got the card. Even though I knew it was useless to think this way, I occasionally felt overwhelmed by guilt. Losing his parents at a young age must have left a deep scar on Steve's heart. He might even get teased at school. Worried, I decided to attend Steve's school parents' day to see how he was doing. Apparently, Steve, with his kind nature, is quite popular in his class. As soon as recess started, Steve was quickly surrounded by his classmates. I felt relieved that he didn't seem to be having a hard time. Then I overheard one classmate curiously ask, "Steve, don't you have a mom and dad?" That's weird. That innocent question sent a chill down my spine. They must have found it strange that only his grandmother was there instead of his parents. But contrary to my worries, Steve replied in a cheerful voice, "But I have my grandma." He glanced at me briefly and then said proudly, "My grandma is really kind. She cooks delicious meals, encourages me to try everything, and she can do anything. She's amazing. Wow, can she bake cakes? She sure can. They're super delicious. That's awesome." That day, I secretly shed tears when I got home and treated him to a homemade cake filled with fruits. From then on, Steve studied hard, graduated from a prestigious university, got a job, and moved away, just like Diana. Raising a child for the second time was just as uncertain as the first, but I managed to get through it. Now my joy comes from the letters Steve sends me. He must have watched Diana writing letters because Steve has always been diligent about writing, sending me letters on my birthday and other occasions. This habit continues to this day. Oh, a letter from Steve. One day I opened the mailbox as usual and found a letter from Steve. I hurried back home, excitedly opened the envelope, and read the letter. Besides the usual updates, he mentioned he had a fiancée. Her name is Nancy Simpson, a cheerful colleague from his workplace. He finally found someone special. He also wrote that they were thinking of getting married and wanted to meet me. Nancy wanted to invite me to a restaurant. Feeling tears well up as I read about Steve's growth, I circled the date on the calendar in red because I was looking forward to it so much. The promised day arrived quickly. The designated restaurant was quite upscale, so I decided to wear a formal dress for the first time in a while. As I sat and waited, Steve soon arrived with a woman. Looking up at the grown-up Steve, my heart was filled with joy and pride. "Long time no see, Grandma. How have you been?" "Of course, I've been well. It's good to see you looking well too, Steve. As I mentioned in my letter, let me formally introduce you. This is my fiancée, Nancy Simpson. Nice to meet you." "I'm Nancy Simpson." Nancy sincerely greeted me. "Nice to meet you too. I'm Steve's grandmother, Catherine." I followed her example and greeted her. Then, I thought I heard a soft chuckle from Nancy. Curious, I looked up to see her staring at me intently. That scrutinizing look lasted only a moment before she flashed a friendly smile. "I'm so happy to finally meet you. Steve talks about you all the time. I've always been curious." "Hey, stop it. It's embarrassing." "It's true, though." Watching the two of them laugh together, I decided to dismiss the discomfort I felt earlier as my imagination. It was clear they had a good relationship. Steve, who had gained various experiences in the workplace, chose Nancy himself. I had no reason to worry. The dinner went smoothly. As Steve had said, Nancy was cheerful and a great conversationalist. It seemed she worked in sales at a clothing store, and although she was in a different department, she and Steve often had lunch together. Spending time together, they gradually grew closer. Hearing about their beginning and stories from work was so enjoyable. When caught up in the bittersweet tales, laughing like a teenager and savoring the food, Steve eventually stood up with a hint of embarrassment. "I'll be right back. Just need to use the restroom." As soon as Steve left, Nancy suddenly spoke in a blunt tone, completely different from before. "So, it's true that Steve was raised by his grandma?" "Oh yes, didn't Steve tell you?" "He did. I just thought, no way." Nancy stared at me again with that appraising look. I had made sure to follow the dress code, but I wondered if there was something off. It seemed to me that Nancy was disappointed by my modest dress. "But don't worry, I can love Steve no matter what his flaws are, and I'll take care of you in your old age too, Catherine." "What?" I felt like she had just said something very rude. While I was still stunned, Steve returned with a cheerful, "I'm back." Nancy quickly put on her friendly smile again, acting like nothing had happened. Is Nancy really the right person for Steve? I felt a bit uneasy, but I didn't know everything about Nancy. I didn't want to miss the person Steve chose, so I swallowed my anxiety. The wedding preparations progressed smoothly, and before I knew it, today is finally the day of the engagement party. Since Steve's parents had passed away, I was naturally attending in their place. Nancy's family had booked a luxury hotel for the occasion, saying it was a special day. Apparently, they had known the hotel manager for a long time, and he was happy to accommodate the engagement party. Thinking about the people who would become my family made me a bit nervous. Also, I had only met Nancy that one time at the restaurant, and the unease I felt then was still stuck in my throat like a bone. But despite my worries, the engagement party went off without a hitch. Both of Nancy's parents were cheerfully chatting with Steve. "We've heard a lot about you from Nancy." "Yes, she says you're doing an excellent job at work. I hear you're even up for a promotion next year." "Oh no, I still have a long way to go," Steve responded modestly, looking a bit embarrassed. Just as Nancy came to greet me, Steve must have gone to greet Nancy's parents. It seemed they liked him, and I felt relieved. "Don't be so modest. Someday you might even contract with our company." "Oh, your company? Didn't I mention it? My father runs an apparel shop. He is even contracted with famous designers from Paris and other top designers worldwide." "Well, hey Nancy, this isn't the time to boast." "Oh, sorry. I just got carried away." Apparently, Nancy's father's company had quite a reputation in the fashion industry. He handed me a business card, but I didn't recognize the company name. However, I probably only knew the tip of the iceberg. I didn't think much of it and placed the card on the table. So it seems everyone here has experience in the fashion industry. Steve's workplace was also related to fashion. Additionally, all of Nancy's family members were involved in running apparel shops. I was thrilled to find such common ground that could liven up the conversation. "Everyone including you, Catherine?" "Yes, actually. I used to be a designer before I took in Steve. I had worked as a designer, although I no longer worked as one. Those days as a designer were some of the brightest memories I had. Thinking that everyone who was going to become family had a connection to the fashion industry made me feel grateful for my experience as a designer. An idea struck me, and I leaned forward. "Since this is such a special occasion to deepen the bond between our families, how about I design Steve's tuxedo and Nancy's dress, and we can choose the fabrics together? It would be a wonderful gift to celebrate the two of them. Of course, it was up to Steve and Nancy, the main people involved, to decide. Even though the final decision was theirs, I thought it was a lovely idea. I wanted to do something for them to celebrate their special day in my own way. When I made the suggestion, Nancy's family looked at me in surprise. "You design, Catherine?" "Yes. If I do it, I'll make the best dress and tuxedo." I would have to start by researching the latest trends. There might be some gaps to fill, but thinking about their big day, ideas started flowing freely. As I nodded confidently, Nancy's family fell silent. Then, suddenly, Nancy's father burst into loud laughter. Following his lead, the entire family started laughing. I was taken aback. The loud laughter that echoed throughout the room was clearly mocking me. No, excuse me. I just didn't expect such a suggestion, Nancy's father said after laughing for a while and then clearing his throat. I appreciate the thought, but we can't accept designs made by someone of your financial status. What? I couldn't comprehend what he had just said. As I stood there speechless, Nancy's mother gave me the same scrutinizing look Nancy had given me before. She glanced at my classic dress and giggled. Don't worry, Catherine. We've arranged for the finest outfits from a famous designer for them. You don't need to trouble yourself. I didn't propose this out of concern for money. Well then, let's get on with dinner. Nancy's mother clapped her hands loudly, ignoring my words. As if on cue, servers began bringing in the dishes. However, while luxurious dishes were placed in front of Nancy's family, all I received was a small plate of pickles with no fork. What is the meaning of this? I felt anger bubbling up inside me at the blatant mockery. Nancy's mother, in a tone that showed no remorse, said, "Oh, I'm sorry, but isn't this quite a meal for someone living on a pension? Steve must be struggling. She's just a grandma who can't even afford to buy a single cloth for her adorable grandchild. It must be quite a challenge for him to take care of her." Nancy's father started eating without waiting for us, pretending to be genuinely concerned for Steve. Steve is kind, so he probably can't abandon you, but maybe this is a good chance to cut ties. Yes, Steve, you're still young. It's a shame to waste your earnings on an elderly grandmother with a short time left, Nancy's family said, laughing as if they found it amusing. Why did I have to endure such mockery? Why was I judged and laughed at for my appearance and clothes? Realizing the source of my discomfort and frustration, I was left speechless by their insults. The atmosphere, which I thought was harmonious, had turned dreadful. I decided it wasn't good to stay and began to leave, but Steve stood up faster than me. That's enough. Steve placed the engagement gifts on the table and turned to me. Sorry for wasting your time. Let's go, Grandma. I'll take you back to your high-rise condo. What? A high-rise condo? Nancy exclaimed in surprise at Steve's words. Steve ignored her. No, it's just a poor old lady showing off. What does she know about anything wearing such shabby clothes? That's right, Steve. There's no need to lie to protect her. As we started to leave, their anxious voices called out to us. I was exasperated that they kept talking, but Steve couldn't stand it any longer. He turned around, his eyes blazing with anger. When did I ever say that? Please stop being so disrespectful to my grandmother. I can't let this go any further. But she wore a modest dress at the restaurant, and today too. My grandmother has never relied on me for money, and unlike you, she doesn't judge people by what they wear. She raised me after I lost my parents, doing everything she could. You have no right to speak ill of her. It was rare for the usually calm Steve to raise his voice in such intense anger. I was surprised but also touched that Steve was standing up for me. You said you wouldn't accept designs from someone poor? Well, I refuse to be part of your family. What did you say? I'm calling off this engagement. Wait, Steve, that's too sudden. Yes, Steve, you should reconsider. The family that had been mocking us suddenly looked panicked. Nancy desperately clung to Steve, but he ignored her. Then, as if a thought struck him, he turned to me. Grandma, do you have your old business card from when you were a designer? Yes, I do. Could you lend it to me? Of course. I had brought it in case the conversation turned to my past work during the engagement party. I took out the business card from my bag and handed it to Steve, who then showed it to Nancy's mother. This is my grandmother's designer name. As soon as Nancy's mother and Nancy saw the name on that small card, their eyes widened in shock. Diana Caron? Could it be that Diana Caron? Diana Caron, the famous designer, the avant-garde artist who created outfits for celebrities? Actually, when I worked as a designer, I didn't use my real name. I took the name Diana Caron from my daughter Diana's name and kept my identity secret, avoiding publicity entirely. I thought I had left the industry, but it seemed my name hadn't been forgotten. My grandmother quit her job as a designer to raise me. She never spent money on herself to ensure I would never be in need. I can't forgive anyone who disrespects her. Sir, please never contact us again. Having said what he wanted, Steve turned to leave. The three of them came desperately chasing after us. Wait, no, please wait, both of you. Catherine. We were terribly rude earlier. realizing that Steve wouldn't talk to them anymore. Nancy's father hurriedly apologized to me, but I clearly remembered how they had laughed at me, judged me by my appearance, and were obsessed with money. Steve had spoken out so strongly, I knew I had to confront my feelings too. So, I firmly said to the three of them, I also oppose my beloved grandson becoming part of your family. Thus, our engagement party ended in a complete mess. However, neither Steve nor I had any regrets. Steve was initially downcast, feeling betrayed by Nancy, but he eventually realized it was better to know her true nature before marriage. Afterward, Nancy spread rumors at work, claiming she was the victim of Steve suddenly calling off the engagement. But thanks to Steve's sincere explanation and Nancy's reputation, the misunderstanding didn't spread and soon died down. Despite everything, Nancy still played the victim, saying, I lost the chance to boast about having a wedding dress designed by the legendary designer. People around her were exasperated by her behavior, and she eventually had to resign. Steve wrote to tell me that he had regained his peaceful daily life. However, I still had a minor issue on my end. Catherine, we're so sorry. Please forgive our rudeness. We deeply regret our actions. Please. Nancy's family frequently showed up at my home, begging for forgiveness. I wondered how they got my address, but figured they might have asked Steve. It wasn't Steve's fault, but I was frustrated that they kept coming despite the matter being settled between us. I shook my head at the camera on the intercom. No, what's been said can't be unsaid. Not only had Nancy resigned, but her father's company was also struggling. The reason was that word had spread about them insulting the famous designer Diana Karen. One of the renowned designers contracted with Nancy's father's company happened to be my former student. When she heard about the incident, she was furious and promptly withdrew her products. Apologizing for money doesn't mean anything to me. If you persist, I'll call the police, I calmly warned them. But the three of them wouldn't stop barging into the high-rise condo. Eventually, complaints from neighbors led to the police issuing a strict warning to them. One day, as life began to return to normal, I received a call from one of my former students, the one who had been contracted with Nancy's father's company. It seemed she wanted me to help her with some work. Now that I've raised Steve to adulthood, if I had time, maybe it's not a bad idea to return to designing, I thought. I immediately agreed to her request. When I went to discuss the future work, it turned out to be at the company where Steve worked. Long time no see, Catherine. Thank you for joining the project. It's been a while. I thought it would be a good change of pace. With you, Catherine, we're unbeatable. Apparently, my student had started a new contract with Steve's company. It must be fate. With renewed determination, I returned to the fashion industry, creating new memories with my beloved student. And as for the growing closeness between my student and Steve, that's a story for another time.